am Amy Vetter, and welcome to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. This valuable time is for you to pause in your day and go on your own self-journey. Discover the beliefs that are holding you back from living your best life at work and at home. Learn from the guests on this show as they share their inspirational stories on how they found ways to break internal beliefs that were no longer serving them. Because if you believe you can, you will. And our podcast begins now. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs, where I interview Scott Zarret, founder and president of CPA Academy. With more than 25 years of experience in the accounting profession, Scott Zarret is widely recognized for developing innovative and highly successful marketing and sales strategies. His platform, CPAacademy.org, has processed more than 4,500,000 registrations. An alumnus of University of Maryland's Robert H. Smith School of Business, Scott began his career in audit and tax department of what is now CohnReznick. Scott was named as one of the 2019 top 100 most influential people in accounting. During our interview, we talked about his passion of mountain biking, and through the thread of his passion led him to make decisions not only in his career, but his personal life. Welcome to this episode of Breaking Beliefs. I'm here with Scott Zarret. And Scott, do you want to just give a little background on who you are?
Yeah, absolutely, Amy. Thank you very much for having me here. My name is Scott Zarret. I am from New Jersey. I live in Denver, Colorado. I'm married with two boys. I'm also a CPA and the president of CPAacademy.org. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, we're the largest provider of free CPE in the accounting space.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for being here. And many people take courses through CPA Academy, so they know you one way, but this is all about your journey to getting there and the pivots that you've taken in your life. So let's start at the beginning. So why did you want to become a CPA when you were little, or how did that even start?
Gosh, I would say definitely not when I was little. I don't know that
What did you want to be?
I don't know. I just wanted to be a kid. I come from a family of accountants and educators.
Yeah.
So, it certainly was in the back of my head subconsciously perhaps, but yeah, I think even when I went to college and I got in under the accounting, I applied for accounting and got in, but I still didn't even know at that point what I really wanted to be. But coming from a family who, my father's a CPA, my grandfather was in the accounting space, we had cousins in the accounting space, or a cousin, I should say, and then all the women were in education. I don't exactly know why, but I think it was perhaps in my blood, and I think I took the assumption that the apple didn't fall far from the tree, but I didn't put a whole lot of stock in what I wanted to be. I mean, I was just a normal kid growing up and playing with his friends and taking on normal jobs, which, everyone in my neighborhood did, mowing lawns and stuff like that. But yeah, never really had thought about what that was going to turn into.
So did you like accounting, or how did that all get started for you?
I went to University of Maryland. I got my 4-year degree, and like a lot of the other people that I went to school with, a lot of the big four companies and other public accounting firms recruited heavily from the university. And I ended up taking a job with one of the largest regional firms in the area, Resnick, Fetter and Silverman. And it was a public accounting job. And, from every bit of advice I got, that was the best place to start, a way to really find out what all is out there and really move on from there. So I did that. I started in public accounting and I got my CPA. I passed my CPA exam shortly thereafter. And I wouldn't say I was in love with the work. I don't even know that I was great at it. I just did it. And like a lot of other people, it worked for the time, but I wasn't really passionate about it. So I did have some second doubts about whether I'd made the right choice, to be frank.
Yeah. And so how did you start pivoting in what you were doing?
Well, so, public accounting wasn't a great passion, but I was able to find a job. My second job after was with a company called CSC, Computer Sciences Corporation, and it was much better for me. It was internal audit, and I really had a chance to travel the country extensively and even get out of the country on their dime and see some really great things. So I enjoyed that more. but it still wasn't certainly my life calling. And the pivot for me, I guess what got me out was totally random. I've been a cyclist my whole life. A mountain biker is really, I have a strong identity with mountain biking. And while I was working for Computer Sciences Corporation, just sort of doing my thing, at the same time I was reading about this journey that was going on, the Great Divide mountain bike journey, which was at the time, or actually, well, it was just routed, and people were just starting to do it, but it was touted as the longest mountain bike trail in the world, going from Canada down to Mexico. And I read about it, and just that's where my heart was. And I remember going to my boss at CSC and just saying, after some serious consideration, but I thought maybe I'll ask for a sabbatical and see what they say. And much to my surprise, they said yes. That took about 24 hours. And then I realized, oh, I guess I'm doing it because I have no more excuses. And so my heart actually went into planning for this trip for a full year and then doing this trip. And I think when you're on a trip like that, where it was a self-supported trip and you're with about a dozen people and just out in the wide open in the best possible scenarios, it gives you a lot of time to think about things.
Yeah.
And I think on that trip, I really realized every other person on the trip really seemed to be was passionate about their career, whether they were a retired police officer or a student or anything. And I realized I just had no identity with what I was doing. And it really bothered me. And I had, the time to really think about it. And it hit me like a ton of bricks at the end of the trip. I was like, I don't have to just do what I've been doing. I can move to Colorado. I can move out to the Rocky Mountains and, stay out in Colorado where I love it. And so my next move was really to move out to Colorado.
Before you move on, so maybe you can just tell me what it is about mountain biking that interests you. Like, how did you get started mountain biking, and like what made you so interested in it in the first place?
Yeah, it started out with my father, who encouraged me to go on trips around New Jersey when we were younger. He would pull out these books like the 13 most beautiful rides in New Jersey, and we'd go through Princeton, and I loved it. And then when I was given the option to go to camp, I chose to go to do cycling trips instead through a bunch of different organizations, and I started doing a lot of touring. And so it wasn't mountain biking that first got me going. It was actually touring. I'd probably done 12 or 13 long distance trips, 2 to 4 weeks at least. I'd ridden across the country, the entire thing from Jersey to Oregon at one point, and mountain biking was part of my cycling experience, but the thing that I enjoyed most because of just being in the woods and the sheer just thrill of riding fast over obstacles and having a good time with your friends. So yeah, I loved everything about it.
Yeah. So then it just started growing, and then you're like, I want to see what this would be like to do it for 3 months.
It was like the trip of the trip of a lifetime. It was written about in all the outdoor magazines, and the first guys who did it were actually from DC, where I was living at the time, and I did know them through the bike shop that I was racing with. And it was just this pipe dream, like the ultimate test. Yeah, trip of a lifetime. So I did it. And at the end, I was like, well, that's really fun, but I didn't really see a career path out of it, but at least I figured I could find, I could move where I want.
Personal path.
And so, yeah, it introduced me to I'd actually never even been to Denver. I'd just been through Colorado. The trip goes through Montana, Idaho, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. And Denver was just the place that seemed to have the most promise in terms of a potential future with a career. But I'd never even been to Denver when I decided to move there. It was just the idea of being in close proximity to the mountains.
Yeah. So, so you quit your job after this trip with no job, or what? What was your plan?
Plan's a strong word. I had a car that I thought would make it to Colorado. Yeah. My plan was to see if that was true. It was mostly true. And I made it to Colorado actually on April 14th. So the first thing I did was help my buddy whose house I was staying at prepare his tax returns. That was great. But then I settled in the next day, and found a new home and a new life, and it was fantastic. But the job I got eventually was very similar to very similar to things that I'd done in the past. So it was a way to pay the bills. It wasn't. I was going to take the first job that paid well enough for me to do my thing, but not much of a career path. And that company actually went under after about a year. and I was laid off from that. So that ended that. Actually, serendipitously, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a means to an end.
So then what did you start doing? What did you start a new career doing once you got going?
You know, after I lost that job, which I was really not that into. I mean, I had a great personal life. Like I had a great,
Right.
I met some super fun people, but after that I was like, I just can't look for another job like this. It's just, I was ready to do anything, and to basically hang up that CPA license. And I started messing around with a few different things, and I was doing everything from helping a buddy who had a audio practice or audio business, doing whole house systems, like really cool whole house systems,
Yeah.
and home theaters for like the wealthy, some stuff that I just thought was unbelievable. And I messed around and followed in his footsteps and watched what he was doing and how he sold. And he didn't didn't go to college. He was high school. He went to high school and that was it. And he was super successful. And I was inspired by him, the way he stayed authentic. But at the same time, when I was actually thinking maybe I could go into business with him and help him sell stereos, which I love. I absolutely love loud music, and I want to be surrounded by it all the time. At the same time, a cousin of mine who knew that I wasn't really active with a career path said, I have an idea for you. He had an accounting practice in New Jersey, and said, there's this thing called cost segregation, which I had never heard of, which was basically accelerated depreciation for commercial building owners. He said, maybe you want to give it a shot and sell it. I think there's a lot of money to be made. And not having a whole lot of better options, I was intrigued, the idea that maybe I could do something related to a small business, and maybe I could salvage my CPA background and get into something different, which was entrepreneurship, and sales and whatever else. And so I took that challenge on and decided to commit to it. And we started from scratch. Literally the company didn't have a name or a logo or a website or anything. And so I just tried to figure out how to make that happen and did my homework. And on his dime, he was the investor, was creating all this collateral and all this material. And that was really my first segue into something totally different in the accounting space, trying to sell to accountants and not just, not do the public accounting or internal accounting role. And I did enjoy it. I did enjoy the different entrepreneurial aspects of it. And the problem, though, was that I spent a year doing all that and had nothing to show for it. And didn't sell anything. We had, people were open to having me come in and pitch, but not a dime was made from it. And that's quite a bruise to the ego, because that's just a rough first impression. It's one thing if you're at least paying the bills, but that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, mostly tears, to put into something. So it was a good learning experience. And I don't regret doing it, but that was a stepping stone.
Yeah. Well, and I think what's important for, people when they listen to different people's history as well, is that your expertise is important, like something that you come back to. There might be like whole other ways, like your knowledge of accounting, is important in order to do other things with accountants. And so it doesn't mean you have to do accounting, but without that history and experience and relationships, your new track, even if it was something different, like that helped you along the way.
I agree. And that's what I was always told from my father and grandfather, is that accounting is the backbone of all business. And in order to really be able to see the whole picture, that would be probably one of the most important things to understand. And I'm grateful for that. And in retrospect, you'll see that I'm, really was grateful for all these different learning experiences. But yeah, I don't think it was until much later that I realized how true it was, that these, that experience and the things that I studied in college were really going to play out and be very helpful for me later on. And I'm glad I didn't just turn my back on those things, but I was ready to at one point.
Right, exactly. And I think everybody has those moments in their life, but that's where you kind of have to pause and think about, like, what are my passions and how could I use my expertise in a different way rather than giving up all your knowledge that you have, because there's so many different ways you can go about it. So what happened after that?
Yeah, so Around that same time, I was trying to figure out ways to sell. I was always trying to figure out ways to sell more effectively. There's got to be a better way than making cold calls. Anyone who's done cold calls knows that.
Oh, it's painful.
Horrible, right? No one, talk about a long day. But so I was trying to figure out how to make that more scalable. And I started to mess around in different areas. And so I went from cold calls and meeting one-on-one with CPAs to actually realizing that if you want to establish credibility, then it really helps to be in a room with a lot of people who could hear what you have to say. And that meant small seminars. And so we started doing small seminars. And then I realized, well, small seminars are good, then big seminars must be better. And so I put together a big seminar here in Denver and really put my neck out on the line to organize this conference. And it was very successful. We had 150 or 160 people, and I had invited all the folks to participate, including the head of DU's real estate tax program, who was a big deal around here, and even invited the IRS to participate and speak. And to my surprise, they accepted the invite. And so it just kept snowballing with different sponsors, and we had this really big event, and we talked about cost segregation, and I thought, what a genius I am. I just surrounded myself with all these experts, and I bet the phone's going to ring off the hook. But the problem was I didn't speak at that event. I organized it, and I gave other people the opportunity to speak. And so while I did a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff, when it was over, I had very little data. I had no data about the audience other than who registered and their contact information. But I think when that event was over, I was proud of the fact that I had pulled off an event that was very successful. Everyone was happy. The stakeholders of it were very happy. But I realized it wasn't scalable. And so as successful as the event was, I was like, when can I do that again? Another year from now? No, it wasn't going to be regular. And so it really started to dawn on me that there had to be a more scalable way. And that's when webinars were starting to come into favor, and they weren't they were pretty rough in the beginning, if you remember. And the fact that we have a webcam now is nothing to take for granted. That's not how it started. Right. And so, I just was intrigued by webinars and thought this makes sense. That's something you can do every day if you want to. Right. And I really started to study what was happening there and really tried to understand why they weren't more popular. I mean, they were certainly rising in popularity, but I was all in. I mean, I was fascinated by the concept, and so my mind started to shift into how can I get more progressive with the teaching, and how could I do some teaching of my own. And so I found a different company. It wasn't really working out with my cousin, and I found a progressive company that I pitched this idea to of doing webinars and said, for the purpose of selling cost segregation. It was an accounting firm, and they loved it. I said, I've got a list of emails. Let's put on these classes, get ideally hundreds of people to listen and try to convert. And fortunately, they bought into the idea and brought me in as an employee. So now for the first time, I was actually making a salary. So that was nice. Yeah. And then I had resources of people who had similar mindsets, except that they wanted to charge for the content instead of give it away for free, which certainly can make sense on one level, because you want to set up some barrier to, only have people who really have some skin in the game, or, have shown that they have at least willing to pull out their wallet to participate in that subject. It's very telling. But after a little while, I realized I was comping everybody I ever met. I was like, come to this class for free, because I didn't want that to be the barrier. And they agreed with that. And that's what we did. And we started getting in really big numbers. We created, actually I helped them create the site, which was separate from their main website that was really focusing on the education. And I guess long story short, I did that for 8 years and I educated about 25,000 people, which I thought was just a massive number at the time. And I didn't really realize what the potential was, how far it could be taken. So that was, that was how I got into webinars.
Yeah. So I know that your wife holds a pivotal piece in your transformation. So how did you meet her?
I met her, was I in year 7 with KVKG, I think. And I was living a good life out here, doing my thing. But the job that I had, I was working for somebody else. I was doing better than I'd ever done. And I felt good about what I had created for the company. that's where I was in life when I met my wife, and I met her at a party. And it was on Halloween, actually. Met her at a party on Halloween, and the following weekend, I had thrown a singles party, believe it or not, here in Denver, and she was there. And we met, and she does, yeah, it was, for me, it was love at first sight. I mean, maybe that's not totally true, but I met her on a Friday, and by Sunday I was in love, so maybe not first sight, but pretty quick. And yeah, she's, when I met her, she had just moved to Denver. She had been there, when I met her at the Halloween party, she'd been there all of a week. And so, yeah, she was only into 2 weeks into Denver, and I was just head over heels. The problem was that she was a PhD from Harvard, and a little, you know, it was kind of a little out of my league. And she moved to Denver because she was so passionate about her work and giving back to the community and you know, serving and helping others. And here I was, you know, having a good time and happy about that, buying myself a lot of free time. But the question was always, so what are you passionate about? What do you want to do? And I never really had, you know, I was proud of what I did, but I didn't own anything. And so I think it was always a matter of what kind of piece, you know, what can I carve out for myself? What is it that, that I could do to, I don't know if prove myself is the right word, but certainly make the most of my career, which wasn't something I had focused on. I had focused on my personal, you know, mostly my personal ambitions.
Right.
And so we were on the fast track. We met and got engaged. She moved in 6 months later. We got engaged on our year anniversary, and we had a child on the way shortly thereafter. And it was right around the time when I found out we were pregnant that something snapped, or I don't know if snap's the right word, something just hit me like a ton of bricks. I had an epiphany, and I realized, gosh, this thing that I've been doing for 8 years for this other company is a universal concept of using education to help a person position themselves as a thought leader to sell, and could be applied really to anything in the accounting space. And just couldn't figure out why others weren't doing the same thing. And I remember just sitting there and going, why wouldn't I do this? Why wouldn't I create a business like this? And really spent a lot of time trying to figure out that answer, and didn't come up with an answer. I figured I should do it. It seemed like a great idea. And there wasn't a single shared platform out there where people were able to you know, plug into a system like that. And so that was the first time I was like, you know, I actually feel like I can make a go of this. And I think with a child on the way, you know, you face this decision of is this the time to play it safe because I don't want to gamble on savings and fail right now? Time for that before, you know, but now there's a lot more at stake. Or is this the perfect time to do it and not use my son as an excuse for, you know, saying this is too risky? And fortunately, I chose the latter and said, I'm not, you know, I would never want to second guess this decision and take the easy path only to regret it for the rest of my life, because I felt very strongly about it. And I think some people could say that, well, that's a really foolish decision to take on something that risky when you don't even know what it's like to have a child and everyone tells you how bad it is, or how much time. Not bad. Let's edit that part out. It's wonderful, but it's very time consuming, and there's lots of there's lots of surprises.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah.
Yeah. So where did you start seeing the success when you moved into creating CPA Academy? How did that really take off? How did people get to know you?
Yeah, so it took a good year of moonlighting, of really trying to figure out the whole thing, you know, doing your SWOT analysis and every other bit of research that's possible before I opened the doors. And when I first opened my doors, by the way, I was charging for some content too, because I wasn't finding speakers that were all that willing to plug into the model. And so it was actually very traditional. And I remember getting a call from someone else who is already very established in the CPE space going, why would you get into paid webinars at this point? And I was like, that's really not my plan. It's just, that's how I'm starting. And I didn't really see a path, but I very quickly found companies who were giving away free webinars who wanted more attendance. I mean, no
Mm-hmm.
surprise there. And so the real question was, how do you come up with a price point for it? And so that was the real challenge, is what's the business model? How much do you charge, et cetera? And I came up with, what I believe to be a very fair price point. And long story short, in that first year, which had a lot of stress, I mean, when you're dipping into your savings and you're cutting checks to software companies, 10,000 here, 20,000 there, and you're not sure how viable it is, it's pretty stressful in a whole new way. It's your money and it's a different ball game. But in the first year, we had generated so many new clients, including big ones, like Dale Carnegie was one of my first big clients, that I was doing better in that first year than I had ever done working for somebody. And so I was lucky. I mean, the stats that you read out there show that the odds are against that. And, there's certainly no resting or no taking it easy on cruise control. There's nothing like that. You're just constantly watching your back and constantly worried about the next time your site crashes and everything else. So it was as stressful as could be, but it was exciting. And, couple that with having a newborn in your life and all the joy that goes with that, it was like a new life. I mean, it really felt like Scott 2.0. And for people who only knew me from like single mountain biking party Scott, this was like, wait, I'm sorry, you're like a dad now and you started a business and you're not going out anymore. And I actually started to forget who I wasn't even really racing anymore. I put that aside. You just can't have it all. And I feel it really felt like a whole, not just a chapter, but like a whole rebirth.
Yeah. So how is CPA Academy developed over time? So is it something you thought it would be, or did it turn into something different or something in the middle?
When I first started, my benchmark was, I want to have the creative flexibility. I'd like to be able to work for myself, not have someone else control my destiny. I wanted to be able to prove that I was able to do something on my own that was meaningful. And I wanted to be able to, make a living that was going to, be able to afford me the things that I felt were important for our family. And by those measures, it was successful, in the offset. And I think that, I was fortunate because the business model that I had come up with from the beginning, the idea of, my idea truly was to use free education as the model. And the fact that we charged for the first class was really a bit of an anomaly. But the reason I bring that up is that even now, 8 years into the business, the model has barely changed at all. And so that's really one of the most reassuring things, is that I was fortunate that I did the homework up front to get the business model right. I didn't have to keep pivoting in that sense at all. So
Right.
While there was a lot of drama that goes on, a lot of things that have happened, it wasn't like we had to start from scratch at any point. And so it's all been building on the initial concepts. And a lot of the speakers that I had in year one, including my old employer, still present on our platform. And so there's been probably more similarities than differences, but it's certainly, 8 years into it, very different ballgame. When I started out in the beginning, it was just me. And I really felt strongly in the beginning, I just wanted it to be me. I didn't want to have employees. I wanted full control. I didn't want to just didn't know anything about managing. So it didn't seem like a good idea for me to do it. And I felt like I was a, jack of all trades and could do it. And I really pushed back on the idea of having, a team. And so I think probably the biggest change was when I just couldn't handle it anymore. I mean, literally there's just not enough hours in the day, and I was forced into hiring. And so, those were the biggest milestones for me, I would say, are probably in the hiring decisions that I've made and the people that I brought on, and how that's helped shape the company and make it scalable and allowed me not to lose my mind in this entire process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, great. So I like to just ask you some quick fire closing questions. So you pick a category. So either family and friends, money, spiritual, or health.
Oh, I'll take spiritual, please.
Okay.
That's what you would take, isn't it?
Yeah.
What
So
would you
things or
take?
actions I don't have that I want.
I don't have that I want. I don't have a meditation practice. And that goes along with spiritual, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
it seems like that would do me a world of good. I wish I knew how to slow down my brain and kind of let go a little bit,
Yeah.
but I'm not there yet.
Okay. Things or actions I do have that I want.
Um, I I do have a yoga practice. That's changed with the stay-at-home orders because I need to get away to make the most of it. But I do have a yoga practice, and I still have mountain biking. And the mountains to me are really among the most spiritual things for
Mm-hmm.
my soul.
Yeah. So things or actions I don't have that I don't want.
I don't have that I don't want. I don't have coronavirus. I don't want coronavirus. It seems like horrible juju, and so I'm gonna try to stay away from that one.
There you go. And things or actions I do have that I don't want.
Do have. So I am competitive by nature, and at least that's what I'm told. So, often I'm just competing with myself, so I don't know. That's probably better, but I am competitive with myself, and I have to imagine that that's probably not super helpful for finding my inner peace. Certainly helps when it comes to business, but I could probably work on that a bit.
So is there anything you want to make sure that people take away from your journey that you haven't talked about already, or message that you want people to walk away with?
For me, my journey, my journey started from as we talked about, from your early, your parents, from your influences.
Right.
But really, my business success only came together over the past 10 years or so. And as you could, I think, hear or feel, I didn't actually think it was going to happen for me at all. And even worse, I thought I had made this really bad decision about even becoming a CPA, and didn't think that the skills that I was acquiring along the ways would ever come full circle, what you were talking about earlier, and, help me in the business world. And I didn't realize how the skills that I was building, really would help me in life. And so in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I followed my heart and my passions, and took chances in moving, around the country and putting my neck on the line for starting a new business without selling myself out. So I just feel, your podcast is breaking beliefs, of course. And I think that for me, the biggest belief to break is just what, is not doing what makes other people happy. It's making what you happy, and doing what makes you happy, and not worrying about what others think.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean that both in the work and the personal sense, and so I think trying to not allow fear or doubt to get in the way is really important. And for me, that's what helped find my calling. And I'd also say that probably most important, is to surround yourself with great people always, whether that's employees or clients or, parents or wife and kids. It's all critical, and it really all helps make you. And, most of this doesn't mean a whole lot unless you've got the supportive loved ones. So, I'd say follow your heart would be really my biggest, recommendation.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I know there will be a lot of great nuggets for people to take away.
Thank you so much, Amy. Appreciate it.
Now for mindful moments for my interview with Scott Zarret. And this was a really unique interview because of the fact that his career really bloomed later in his life. And I think it's important for anyone that is starting out in their career, realizing that wherever you begin doesn't mean that's where you end up. And if you ever have moments where you feel doubt and so forth, you just keep walking forward until you see other opportunities or take the risks that you need to take in order to find those passions. And, for the majority of his story, he was mostly following what his family did, what seemed the normal path, until he really got to a point in his career where he had that pivotal moment of seeing this bike ride that was going to be so important to him to do for whatever reason that was. We all have those pivotal moments in our life, but for him, this Great Divide mountain bike ride actually changed his life and took him in a new direction, figuratively and literally, because he planned to go on this sabbatical for 3 months to take this bike ride. And in the process, really decided that he wanted to make a shift in his career and his personal life and take the risk and go out to Colorado after it was over and start a whole new life. And these are huge risks. And, for some of us, that might be too big of a risk to quit your job and start over in a new city. For others, that may mean that you still are secure in a job, but you keep looking for opportunities where you can continue to pivot your career along the way when things start being exciting to you to think about, or other ideas. And really, in any profession, there's so many ways you can use your expertise if you open your eyes. And what we saw with Scott's story is that even though he quit being in public accounting or in corporate accounting, he couldn't have done sales in accounting or be doing education in accounting like he's doing today without that experience that he had when he began. And that to me is a very inspirational thing for anyone starting out in college, because I know when I started out, I was looking at the work, not sure if I had made the right decision. And as you keep walking forward and getting deeper and learning more and keeping your eyes open to different clients and different businesses and different things that you can do in your profession of expertise, then other opportunities open up. But you just have to be open without putting walls up of why you can't. And that's usually what I see with people, is there's a million excuses of why you can't, instead of just taking the leap and saying, let me give it a shot. And really, with meeting his wife and her challenging him on what is his true passion, what are the things that he wants to dedicate his life and career to, and know that there's purpose behind what he was doing, it made him really step back and pause and make sure what he was doing in his life aligned with purpose. And that really, to take a risk when your wife is pregnant to start a business is a huge leap of faith. But if we don't believe in ourselves, it won't ever happen. And we can always find a million reasons why life is not perfect for any major decision we make in our life. But if we plan, if we have people around us that can give us the right advice, as well as the knowledge that we need to go forward and make an educated risk, these are the things that help us with the pivots that we need to make. And I think it was really important that when he was talking about even starting his business and not wanting employees, and I remember having that feeling, is when we decide to take on staff, we have to start letting go and realizing people may do things differently. And it's truly the only way to scale a business, a department, wherever you're working, is to allow people to grow and learn and enable them and empower them to grow their skills so that you can have the life that you want and you're not working around the clock. So surrounding yourself by great people really can help not only them, but actually empower you to live the life that you want. And also looking for things that feed your soul, that are what your purpose is in life, can help you to make sure that you've got happiness and not worry what other people think along the way. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to the Breaking Beliefs podcast. I hope you will take a moment to pause before entering back into your day to reflect on this podcast and note 1 to 2 actions you are inspired to do from today's conversation that you could incorporate into your life. To read the full blog and listen back to this episode or any other, you can find them at www.amyvetter.com/Breaking Beliefs podcast and related videos on my YouTube channel. For daily inspiration, follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Amy Vetter CPA. I hope that you will choose to like this and subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and more, so that you can join us for more inspiration on our next episode.